Okay, so today we're diving deep into, the Beach
The
Boys.
Beach Boys.
Yeah. And when you think about the Beach Boys, it's like, what comes to mind first?
Surfing.
Like that 1960s California sound.
Exactly like that surf rock vibe and those harmonies.
Yeah, those incredible harmonies, right? It's like
That
sunshine and beaches and hot rods.
it's that classic Southern California image.
Exactly. But as we dig a little deeper, you realize they're much more than just a fun in the sun band.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they really evolved over time, and particularly under Brian Wilson's leadership.
Yeah, Brian Wilson, the genius behind so many of their
He
hits.
became sort of a voice for that post-World War II generation.
Right, that whole American suburban experience.
Yeah, all those feelings of hope and aspiration, but also that undercurrent of anxiety, you know?
Like that sense of wanting something more, that maybe the American dream wasn't all it was cracked up to be.
Exactly. And their music really captured that in a way that few other bands could.
And it's amazing when you think about it. They sold over 70 million albums.
Yeah, that's a staggering number.
It really speaks to how much their music resonated with people.
And it wasn't just about the numbers, it was about how they gave voice to those deeper emotions.
Yeah, like the hopes and dreams of those families who moved west, seeking a better life, that California dream.
Which often turned out to be more fragile than they imagined.
Exactly. So they were tapping into something really universal, something about the American experience itself.
And to think it all started in this small suburb of Los Angeles, Hawthorne.
Yeah, Hawthorne, California, where these guys all grew up.
Heart of the Beach Boys, you had the three Wilson brothers, of course, Brian Dennis and Carl.
Brian being the eldest and the creative driving force.
Yeah, lead singer, bassist, and the mastermind behind so many of those iconic songs.
And then Dennis on drums.
The wild one, they say.
Yeah, and Carl, the youngest, on guitar.
And then you had their cousin Michael Love, who played a key role, too.
Right. Michael Love on vocals and often collaborating with Brian on the lyrics.
And then rounding out the core group, Alan Jardine and David Marks, who both played guitar at different points.
And later Bruce Johnston joined the mix as well.
Yeah, a lot of talent packed into that group.
And they didn't just appear out of nowhere, right?
Right.
Like their musical upbringing was pretty unique.
Oh, definitely. I mean, their parents played a huge role.
Yeah. Their dad, Murray, was actually a songwriter himself.
Which is interesting because he also ran a machinery shop.
So clearly a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit there.
Yeah, and their mom, Audrey, she played organ and piano.
So you can see how those musical influences came together.
Definitely, they were surrounded by music from a young age.
And, that early exposure clearly shaped them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they were listening to everything from Chuck Berry to those vocal harmony groups like the Four Freshmen and the Four Preps.
Right, and you can hear those influences in their early sound.
Definitely that blend of rock and roll energy with those intricate vocal harmonies.
Yeah, that's what made them so unique.
And then you have Dennis, who really brought the surfing element into the picture.
All right, he was the one who was down at the beach all the time riding those waves.
He was the surfer of the group.
And he was the one who inspired Brian to start writing songs about surfing.
Which is interesting because their first band name wasn't even the Beach Boys.
No, it was the Pendleton.
After those Pendleton shirts that were popular with the surfing crowd.
Right, and they even released their first single, Surfin', under that name.
Back in 1961.
And it actually did pretty well locally.
Yeah, it got some airplay and created a bit of a buzz.
So you could say Dennis's passion for surfing really shaped their early identity.
Definitely, it gave them that unique angle that helped them stand out.
And then, in 1962, they signed with Capitol Records.
That was a huge moment for them.
Yeah, they became Capitol's first rock and roll act.
It was a sign of things to come. That rock music was really starting to break through.
And for the Beach Boys, it was a chance to take their music to a wider audience.
And for Brian Wilson, it was an opportunity to really flex his creative muscles.
He had big ambitions as a songwriter and producer.
And Capitol gave him the freedom to explore those ambitions.
And so they started churning out hits, one after another.
Songs like 409 and Surfin' Safari.
Those were huge.
They captured that whole youthful energy of California in the early 60s.
And their debut album also did really well.
It reached number 14 on the charts, which was a pretty impressive start.
But it was Surfin' USA in 1963 that really catapulted them to stardom.
That song was a monster hit.
It became an anthem for a generation.
And it solidified their image as the ultimate California surf band.
And around that same time, Alan Jardine came back to the group, permanently replacing David Marks.
And it was also around this time that Brian really started to assert himself as the creative leader.
He was taking more and more control over the music.
He had a vision, and he was determined to see it through.
And that vision really came to life with their next album, Surfer Girl.
Now, that was a landmark album.
Absolutely. Brian actually managed to secure an incredible amount of studio autonomy from Capitol,
Which was almost unheard of at the time.
He was essentially given free rein to write, arrange, and produce the entire album.
It was a testament to his talent and Capitol's faith in him.
And Surfer Girl was a critical and commercial success.
It really showcased Brian's growth as a songwriter and producer.
The title track itself is so beautiful.
But it has that bittersweet quality, that yearning for something just out of reach.
And Brian actually cited "When You Wish Upon a Star" as an inspiration for that song.
Really?
Yeah, you can hear that sense of childlike wonder mixed with a touch of melancholy.
It's fascinating how he was able to blend those elements so seamlessly.
And his production skills were becoming more and more sophisticated.
He was starting to be compared to Phil Spector, the wall of sound guy.
Yeah, he was using these really intricate arrangements and creating these lush sonic landscapes.
Think about songs like Little Deuce Coupe. Fun, 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 and I get around.
And Don't Worry, Baby.
Oh, man, that song is so heartbreaking.
It really showcases Brian's ability to convey deep emotion through his music.
But all this creative output was taking its toll.
Yeah, Brian was starting to struggle with the pressures of fame and the demands of touring.
And he was experimenting with drugs, which didn't help.
By 1964, he was having serious mental health challenges,
So he made the decision to stop touring altogether.
which was a huge turning point for the band.
Glenn Campbell actually filled in for him on tour for a while.
And then later, Bruce Johnston took over,
And that allowed Brian to focus all his energy on studio work.
which led to one of the most groundbreaking albums of all time.
Pet Sounds, released in 1966.
That album is a masterpiece.
It's considered by many to be one of the greatest albums ever made.
It's so innovative, so emotionally resonant.
It's a real departure from their earlier surf rock sound.
It's more introspective, more complex.
It deals with themes of love loss and growing up.
It's an album that you can listen to over and over again and discover something new each time.
And it had a profound influence on other musicians.
Yeah, even Paul McCartney has said that Pet Sounds was a huge inspiration for Steve Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Imagine that one of the Beatles being inspired by the Beach Boys.
It just shows you how groundbreaking Pet Sounds was.
And then on top of that, you have Good Vibrations.
Released later that same year.
What a song.
It's been called a pocket symphony, and that's a pretty accurate description.
It's so layered, so complex.
Brian used all these different instruments and recording techniques,
He was really pushing the boundaries of what pop music could be.
and it became a massive hit, reaching #1 on the charts.
And it earned them 3 Grammy nominations.
So Brian was at the peak of his creative powers.
But then things started to unravel.
Yeah, he was working on this incredibly ambitious project called Dumb Angel, which later became known as Smile.
It was supposed to be even more groundbreaking than Pet Sounds.
But the pressure was immense,
Brian was struggling with his mental health.
and the project just became too overwhelming,
It stalled and was ultimately abandoned.
which was a huge disappointment for everyone involved.
The remaining band members tried to salvage some of the material.
And they released an album called Smiley Smile in 1967.
But it wasn't the same.
It lacked the cohesiveness and the ambition of the original Smile project.
It was a sign that things were changing for the Beach Boys.
The late 60s were a turbulent time for them,
They had some legal battles with Capitol Records.
and they eventually left the label, signing with Warner Brothers in 1970.
But their commercial success was waning.
Brian was becoming more and more reclusive.
While the rest of the band continued to tour and record,
They released some good albums during this period, like Sunflower,
which is now considered a cult classic.
but it didn't sell well at the time.
And then in 1974, something unexpected happened.
A greatest hits compilation called Endless Summer went to #1.
It was a huge surprise,
It showed that there was still a huge appetite for the Beach Boys' music.
especially those early surf rock hits.
And then in 1976, Brian made a partial comeback,
He released an album called 15 Big Ones.
which was commercially successful, but a bit uneven.
It had some great moments, but it also felt a bit disjointed.
And then in 1977, Dennis released his own solo album.
Pacific Ocean Blue.
That album is actually really good.
It's much more personal and introspective than the typical Beach Boys fare.
It shows a different side of Dennis's talent.
But tragically, Dennis drowned in 1983.
It was a huge loss for the band.
They soldiered on, releasing an album simply titled The Beach Boys in 1985.
But it wasn't until 1988 that they really experienced a resurgence,
Brian released his first solo album that year,
which was critically acclaimed.
and the Beach Boys as a group had a #1 hit with Kokomo.
That song was everywhere.
It even earned them a Grammy nomination.
And they were finally inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
It was a well-deserved honor.
And it cemented their legacy as one of the most important bands of all time.
The 90s saw them continue to tour and record.
Michael Love took on a more prominent role in the business side of things.
And Brian continued to release solo albums and collaborate with other artists.
He even worked with his daughters Carney and Wendy, who formed the group Wilson Phillips.
And Carl sadly passed away from cancer in 1998.
He was a huge loss for the band and for music in general.
Later that year, a collection of rare and unreleased tracks called Endless Harmony was released.
Along with a documentary about the band's history.
And Brian continued to be active in the 2000s.
He released Gettin' In Over My Head in 2004.
Which featured collaborations with some big names.
And perhaps most importantly, he finally completed and released Smile as a solo album.
After all those years.
It was a moment that many fans thought would never happen.
And it was a triumph.
The album was met with critical acclaim.
And it finally gave Brian the recognition he deserved for that long-lost masterpiece.
And then in 2011, a boxed set of the original Smiley sessions was released,
giving fans an even deeper look into Brian's creative process.
And in 2014, a biopic about Brian's life called Love and Mercy was released.
It was a great film.
It really captured the highs and lows of his career.
And in 2005, Pet Sounds was inducted into the Library of Congress's National Recording Registry.
That's a huge honor.
It recognizes the album's cultural, historical, and aesthetic significance.
And then in 2012, the surviving members of the Beach Boys reunited for a 50th anniversary tour.
It was a great way to celebrate their legacy.
And they even released a new album called That's Why God Made the Radio.
Their first album of original material in over 2 decades.
And they followed that up with a live album from the tour.
And there have been numerous archival releases and remastered versions of their classic albums.
So their music continues to reach new audiences.
And just last year, in 2023, there was a Grammy tribute concert honoring the Beach Boys,
featuring a whole host of contemporary artists.
It was a testament to their enduring influence.
So you can see the Beach Boys story is so much more than just surf rock.
They evolved and matured over time.
Their music could be more complex and emotionally resonant.
And they tapped into something really profound about the American experience.
Yeah, that desire for a better life, that yearning for something more.
And they left behind an incredible body of work.
A legacy that continues to inspire and influence musicians to this day.
It makes you think about how a band that started out singing about surfing and cars could achieve such lasting greatness.
It's a testament to their talent, their vision, and their ability to connect with audiences on a deeply emotional level.
Absolutely.
So what other bands do you think have made such a significant impact and evolved so much over their careers?
That's a great question, and one worth pondering.
It's something to think about as you listen to the Beach Boys' music and appreciate their journey.
Definitely, their story is full of twists and turns and ultimately a testament to the power of music.
So dive in, explore their catalog, and see what resonates with you.
You might be surprised at what you discover.
And that's our deep dive into the Beach Boys.
Until next time.
Keep exploring.